On the first day of every semester in which I'm teaching at Babson, the very first day, I share some values for the course. And the most important one, I think, that I share with my students is trust the system. I look at them and I say, trust the system. And I say that several times, as many times as I can remember. I have to reiterate that because they're coming into a course, and if they don't understand the system, they could get discouraged. They could think they're not doing well when they're doing well. I'm thinking about the course that I taught last semester. I'm teaching it again in the fall. I've taught the course maybe 20 or more times. So I know what's going to happen. Similar to our Father in heaven, he knows what's going to happen. And I think the biggest challenge that we have as believers, let me speak for me, biggest challenge I have is trusting his system. By the way, if you didn't know, system's in here. So it could be a challenge for students to trust the system. So I have to say that to them. I became financially literate, I'd say maybe 6 years ago, maybe 7 years ago. Things were not going well with us financially before that. And one of the most important things I learned during that process was the importance of investing. So I had a 401k, but I didn't understand it. I didn't know anything about it. I heard people talk about stocks. I heard mention of mutual funds, but I didn't understand it. So I had to spend some time learning how to invest, how to handle my money. There's a class, by the way, going on after church downstairs. And if you are at all like I was, I would suggest that you enroll in that class for the next time that they teach it. But learning things. So one of the most important principles I learned about investing is don't invest in anything you don't understand. Let me say that again. Don't invest in anything you don't understand. I also learned about diversification. And the system I use for financial wealth calls for investing in mutual funds. So some people are terrified of the stock market. I'm not terrified because I've learned mutual funds. And this is a principle that I think has some strong parallels with what I'm going to share today, is that, first of all, there are 4 types of mutual funds that I invest in. But how do I know which 4 to invest in? So I know the categories, and there are many different types of the same categories I can invest in, but which one do I choose? I was taught, look at the 10-year record of the mutual fund and how it has done, and choose the one that has the best 10-year record. Not in 1 year, not in 2 years, not in 3 years, but look at the 10-year history of the mutual fund. That's the one you want. And I'm going to talk to you today about parenting and a system for parenting. Notice I said a system, not the system. One of the things I have to say to my students, I teach public speaking, I teach writing as a history professor, but I have to explain to them on the very first day of class and several times during the semester, this is a system and not the system. You will learn things about parenting from other people. I am not here to declare that this is the system. This is a system. Please understand that before we go any further. So the question I have for us today is, what is a successful parenting system? What is a successful parenting system? And I'm largely sharing the one that my wife and I have put together and used for our kids. But I think there's some principles that will work in your family. I do think that for sure. My thesis, my answer, by the way, that's a word that most college students freak out at, is the word thesis. My answer. Okay, my answer. My answer is a system that is intentional based on specific outcomes we want for our kids. I'll say that again. What is a successful parenting system? A system that in which you are intentional and based on specific outcomes. Every one of your kids is different. I have 2 kids raised in the same home. They're very different. By the way, shout out to my son who is listening online from Maryland. I have 2 kids. They're very different. So I have to and my wife and I have to treat them differently. And I would say to you, you don't have any cookie cutters of kids. They're all different. They have different needs. We talk about kids with special needs. Every kid's got special needs. Can I say that again? Every kid has special needs. We often talk about folks on the spectrum. We all on the spectrum. Amen? Now, I know we got some visitors here. You probably thought we were nuts the way we were praising God, but it's going to get a little crazier, all right? We are all on the spectrum in some way, shape, or form. If you're honest with yourself, you know your thing. You know your thing, right? I know my thing. And we're easier to live with when we understand we all are on the spectrum. And so are our kids. So please understand that. What I want, what my wife wants, we wanted a system that would teach our kids how to become loving, listening, and affirming adults. That's what we wanted. Loving, listening, and affirming adults. If we could teach them that, then we knew we would be successful. We had a discussion at the retreat. What is success? When you get the desired outcome. That's what success is. You know, one of the books I wrote, I talk about systems. It should not be that you have success in an area and you don't know why. You should be able to repeat your success because you had a system that you followed. Now, you're going to have to tweak it depending on what you're doing, but it shouldn't be, look, you know, the Kansas City Chiefs are not surprised that they won the Super Bowl. They planned that back in August. They're getting ready to plan it again this August. And raising successful kids should not be, I don't know how that happened. I don't know how they turned out right. Just figured it just worked. No. You have to have a system. You have a plan. You have to follow the plan. That's what we're going to talk about today. Secondly, as a form of introduction, I've said I teach history. I'm an historian. Okay, I've been doing that for a long time. I studied largely American history, the continent, Africa, the continent, mostly West and Central Africa, because that's where most of the people that look like me in the United States came from. So I've studied that. The Caribbean. I've studied parts of Latin America, South America. And I've studied it from a perspective that goes all the way back to, say, 15th, 16th century. And in the process of doing my work, you pick up on parenting, child raising from all over the Americas, all over Africa. And there's some interesting things that you see. I've also understood what happens when you parent kids in a slave society. What happens when you parent kids in a colonial society? There's a lot of stuff that's dysfunctional that you may think, oh, this is good parenting. No, it comes out of dysfunction. And we have to be honest about that. Some of the things that we do, we need to stop doing. So what's my goal for today? My goal for today is that you learn, that you reflect, and that you reconsider. That you learn, reflect, and reconsider your parenting. If I can do that, I can sit down and be happy in the process. Can we go to the next slide? We're going to talk about the meeting place. Some of you probably are not familiar with this term. This term comes from the pastor of the church in Temple Hills, Maryland at that time, where me and my wife met. By the way, some of you who are unmarried and you're trying to figure out how do I find a spouse, I met my wife at a Friday night Bible study on the front row of the Bible study. That's where I met my wife. I wasn't clubbing. No offense if you were, but I wasn't clubbing. I was Friday night, while everybody was out doing what they were doing, I was at a Bible study. And one of the things that Pastor Cherry would teach us is this concept of the meeting place. He would talk about this during the sermon, but it wasn't until we went through our premarital class, 12-week premarital class. It wasn't until we went through the premarital class. By the way, we weren't engaged when we went through the premarital class. We went through the premarital class to find out, should we get engaged? Okay? Okay? I didn't realize that one of the lessons in the premarital class was called the meeting place. He would talk about that during sermons. I didn't know I didn't realize he was preparing us for marriage. He was preparing us for parenting every time he got up and taught. So what's the meeting place? The meeting place is when Tina and I came together and we met, we both came from two different family traditions. And in this case, for this particular talk, we came from families that parented a certain way. I came from a family that parented a certain way. You come to whatever relationship that you end up in, I don't care if it's on your job. Everybody in your job came from a certain tradition. They think this is how you do it. You know, some of y'all know what I'm talking about. The bananas, so they go on the table or the refrigerator, right? Different than the tomatoes. Do they go on the table or in the refrigerator? Depending on the gender mix of your family, does the seat stay up or does the seat stay down? Hello? Y'all know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. So most of us, what we have learned about parenting came from home, and then we met somebody else. It's real important to understand that. You came to the table, you came to the marriage, you came to the relationship with somebody who came from a different paradigm, different system of parenting. You have to understand that. You know, the scripture in Proverbs says, train your child as he should go, and when he's old, he will not depart. If you train him wrong, when he goes or she goes, she will not depart or he will not depart in the wrong way. So the principle of train up a child the way he should go, it's like money. Money is neutral. It's your attitude, it's what you learned about it or what you didn't learn about it that creates a problem. So I want to make sure that we have a clear understanding. Where did you get your ideals about parenting? Okay, and even more than that, did the ideals that you have, were they based in love or fear? You know, I'm of the generation, like most of you, parents use corporal punishment. Translation, the belt. Okay? I'll just tell you, I was saying this to my wife the other day. There were on rare occasions, I'm not saying it's right, I'm telling you what happened. On rare occasions. I think corporal punishment in my mind, unless I have just repressed it so much, I think it happened maybe 6 times. Maybe 6 times. And I remember on occasion where I got smacked by my dad. Now, I'm not telling you to go out and do that. I'm telling you that's what happened. Now, it came to a point with our kids where we stopped using corporal punishment. It really depends on your kids. Let me just say this. There's corporal punishment, then there's abuse. Some of you experience abuse, not corporal punishment. One of the things we learned when we were using corporal punishment is don't use corporal punishment when you're angry. Let me say it again. Don't use corporal punishment when you're angry. One of the things I learned as a parent, there were times I had to give myself a timeout. Because I was about to kill you. So I had, timeout. Let me go to my room, let me go outside, mess with the garden, let me chill out, because I'm just too angry. Please listen to me. Please. Corporal punishment is not abuse. And you can't do corporal punishment if you're angry. You just can't. You just can't. So, were you taught a system based in love or fear? Often, listen to me please, most of us that look like us, some of the folks that don't look like me, but you might have came out of that same thing. If you came out of society that was a slave society, they kept people in line with fear and corporal punishment. Let me change that, with fear and abuse. So, what your parents used, they learned from their parents, and I don't have to go back that many generations to tell my people were enslaved. Do I want to commit the same problem that's been in my family? Let's talk to my folks from the motherland. Most of you came from colonial societies. And you were punished the same way the colonial rulers were punished. Your parents picked up on that. Your great-great-great-parents picked up on that. Do you want to perpetuate that kind of legacy? I asked you, right? I said, I want you to consider, reflect. Remember I said that? Yes. So some of us are doing stuff that the oppressors did to us. I want to raise my kid. I don't want to oppress my kid. Did you raise your child on a system based in sound training or trauma? Some of our relatives passed down a system not based on sound training, but on trauma. Please think about it. Please think about it. Let's go to the next slide. This is a picture of my dad's side of the family. My dad is the tallest one standing up. That's my dad. That's my grandfather. My grandfather died before I met, so I never met him before I was born, excuse me. My Uncle Bob, the shorter male on the left, and my Aunt Dottie. My father was the only one that got married and had kids. Only one. And the thing I learned from my father about his family is that he listened to me. His mother never told him, I love you. Why? Because she probably never heard it from her mother. He doesn't remember hugs and affection from either of his parents. Think about this. So when I was raised, my dad wasn't a hugger. My mother was a hugger. My dad didn't say, I love you. You know who actually introduced that to our family? There was a guy I went to in college. I'm going to yell at, he may see this. His name is Vic Bellamy from Philadelphia. He came from a hugging family. And he taught me how to become a hugger. And then I married somebody who was a hugger. My father-in-law is a hugger. He's a kisser. He is. He's a very affectionate man. And I had to learn that. I had to learn, like, my kids' love language. My daughter, I would say her love language is affirmations and touch. She's a hugger. I had to learn how to be a hugger. Didn't come easy, it wasn't natural. Notice I said I had to learn how to be a hugger. Okay, so that's, again, where did my great-grandfather pick that up? Where did my grandfather, where did my dad pick that up? And do I want to carry that in my family? No, I don't. I need to be a hugger. Next slide, please. Here's my dad as a young father with my oldest brother and my middle brother. I'm not even born in this image. But this is my dad. And I remember when we had Kennedy and Chase, and my dad would watch us. We lived in New York that time at the last phase of his life, so he got to see me be a parent. And he was just like seeing me hug and kiss my kids. Like he couldn't get used to it. Now, if dad was feeling real affectionate with me or my brothers, he'd go. Y'all know people like that? Like when you go to hug them. By the end of my dad's life, he started to become a hugger because of what he watched me do. Think about that. One of my favorite sayings that I did not create is more is caught than taught. My father caught me being a hugger. I married a hugger. That helped. I learned the importance of it. I know it's super important for dads to be like that with the women in their lives, the young ladies in their lives. But again, I had to pick that up. Next slide. Next. Thanks. All right, so y'all tell me, I'm in this picture. Which one am I? So the one next to my mother or the one next to my father? That's my mother and father. The one next to the father? Yeah, you got it right. That's me next to, I had a bit of a pot belly back in the day. But that's me. I don't know where my oldest brother was that day. But again, now my mom, I'll tell you this. My mom, she was our biggest champion. But my mom, I would say, she came into her marriage with some trauma. Her mother was married 3 different times, and 2 of her stepfathers were alcoholics. And they were verbally abusive to my mother. My mother, I think, had problems with men in her life because of that trauma until the day she died. She was our biggest champion in my hometown. Nobody messed with Mrs. Opie's kids. At the same time, my relationship with my mother as I got to be an adolescent was problematic. It was really bad. My mother couldn't give me affirmations to me. I had to learn what my mother thought about me in a positive way from everybody else around me. What she said to them, how proud she was of me. She just didn't say it to me. Her rationale that she would say to my friends is, I don't want him to get a big head. I mean, that's sad to think about. That she couldn't give me, on occasion, she would give me an affirmation directly to me, but mostly it was not. And it made our relationship problematic. I knew my mother was in her last days because when I was around her, the fights stopped. She wasn't fighting anymore with me. It became peaceful. I knew she was in her last days. You got to think about that as parents. What's your relationship with your kids? One of the things that my wife made me do when my relationship with my son was on the rocks, and this was probably 16 through 18, started getting better, but she said to me, you have to work on your relationship with your son. She forced me. My son got so bad, the situation was so bad that we at one time had to send him down to live with my in-laws. And it was when he was down there, I started the tradition of a weekly Zoom call or regular call that I still do today with both my kids when they're away. And it was over a period of time developing that relationship. Not with me directing the conversation, letting it go where he wanted to go. And I would follow and just listen along. And over a period of time, we developed it. But my wife made me do that. It was so important. When I was in college, my father didn't talk to me on the phone. My mother would actually call on the phone. My father would write cards and things like that. But if your kids are away, I don't care if it's college or they just have moved out of the house and they're out of state, put it on the schedule. Damon talked about this at the retreat, his calendar. It's on my calendar. And it has to be some really difficult reason why that calendar gets changed. And if it gets changed, I will call or text the kid and say, can we move our meeting, our catch up to another day or time? But it's important. And some of you who don't keep calendars, It's probably why you miss a lot of important things. So schedule that time with your kid. Listen to them. My daughter's away at school. My kid's away at school. We did it on a daily basis. Let's go to the next slide, please. This is the day after our wedding. So that's both our families together in Northern Virginia. Tina's grandmother's in that picture. My aunts, my uncles, her aunts and uncles are all in that picture. And the question that I have that I had to think about is, what did we bring into the marriage about parenting from those people? Because the good, the bad, and the ugly comes into your relationship from your homes. There's some wonderful things I got from both my parents. I keep those in my parenting system. There's some stuff that needed to be removed. I've removed them from our parenting system. So I'm not here, and I know we have some grandparents here. I know we have some parents here. I know we have some in-laws here. I'm not here to condemn you. There's some good things that you can get. One of my favorite foods is red snapper. Ooh, I love me some red snapper. But there's one thing about the red snapper. I don't eat the bones. Hello? So I don't throw all the red snapper out. I eat the good part and throw out the bones. That's the same thing with your family. Take the good part of parenting that you learn from them, that you observe from them, and put it into your system for your kids. Next slide, please. This is a deep one. This is a deep one. Top 3 causes of divorce. Okay? I'm gonna look straight ahead so nobody knows I'm thinking about you. Okay? Straight ahead. All right? Money disagreements. If you don't have a budget, a written budget, and a budget's not, I spent money, then I write it down. That's not a budget. Hello? Okay? Money disagreements. That puts stress on your marriage. Look at the next one. Parenting disagreements. Tina will tell you, there were times where we were on the verge of divorce because of disagreements on parenting. Now, so Tina's from a military family. So her dad was a career Navy guy, and a lot of times he would be out of the house serving, which meant the majority of the discipline of the kids was her mom. So that must have been challenging for Tina, because in my house that I grew up, it was reversed. Dad was the heavy. And so my expectation coming into it is, I need to step up and deal with the discipline. Not necessarily always corporate, but the discipline period. So it created problems. The whole ideal of responsibility, jobs, works, chores around the house, how the kids should keep their room. Those things can create problems. Expectation about schools. What kind of school should they go to? I want this type of school, I want that kind of school. The decisions about college. What are we going to spend on it? Where are they going to go? Are we going to control the major they have? All those can lead to serious problems in your marriage. And divorce, to the level of divorce. And then the last one, meddling in-laws. Again, I'm gonna look straight ahead. We got some in-laws here, so I'm gonna look straight ahead. If you meddle in their marriage, you're going to create a problem that may lead to divorce. It is their house. Quick story, I'll never forget this. Tina, you remember this. Our first home we bought, we were in Atlanta. And it was the first Thanksgiving we were going to host at our house. And I called my relatives on my side, Tina called hers on her side, to invite them to come Thanksgiving. And after I talked to my dad, everything's set up, my aunt's going to come. By that time, my uncle had passed away. And after I talked to my dad, 5 minutes later, he calls me back. And he says, I want to talk to you about something. I said, yeah. He goes, I don't want my sister to come. Your Aunt Dot, I don't want her to come. Just me and your mother and Tina's family. That would be good, and your brother. And I said, okay, no problem. And I hung up. And then I said, literally, I said, wait, hold up. Hold up. This is our house. And I picked up the phone, called him back, and I said, Dad, I said, I don't want to get in a pattern of somebody telling me what I can and cannot do in my house. And he got real quiet on the phone. He got real quiet. And he said, okay, that's what you want to do? Sure. All right, bye. We hung up. Fast forward maybe 5 years, 10 years, he brought up the conversation. And he said, I really had respect for you for doing that. That you understood this is your house. And you and your wife called the shots and nobody else. No in-laws, no outlaws. Telling you, just an important thing. Next slide, please. Next slide. I knew. I said to Chase, they're going to get an O on this one. Oh. So that's, as you can see, Chase on the left, Kenny on the right. That's one of our favorite pictures. Again, me and Tina come together. The first, I'd say, 10 years or more of our relationship, there's a lot of stress because we're trying to figure out what's the best way to raise them. You know, I'm one of those, you know, I'm going to go out and study, and she's going to read her things. I'm going to come back, and I'm going to try this, try that. It's almost like cooking gumbo, Jonathan, right? Hey, try a little this, try a little that, a little shake of that. I'm trying to figure it out because we did not have this discussion that you all are getting now of there needs to be a system before the kids arrive. All right? Damon said, I think this yesterday too. If you don't know how to handle $50, you ain't ready for 50 million. You got to be able to handle, you know what the Bible says. Those who are faithful in a little, be faithful in a lot. If you can't, to me, one of the most important responsibilities as a Christian is number one, she's first. The kids know that. I've told them before. The only one staying in this house long term is her. That's it. That's it. So my next responsibility after my wife is to care for these kids and prepare them to be responsible adults. And we both had the same intention. Hear me, please. We both, as husband and wife, had the same intention, but we didn't agree on the system to get them there, and it caused problems in our relationship. That's what I'm trying to tell you. It wasn't about she was right and I was wrong and she was right. It was we both wanted the best for the kids, but we didn't get on the same picture, same page. Same thing in our finances. We both want to be, doing well, but we didn't have a system. Had plenty of money coming in, but no system. So there was more month than money because we didn't have a system. So that's what I'm talking about. Next slide, please. So we fast forward. By this time, we've moved from New York to Massachusetts. We're raising the kids. And one of the things that happened that I think was really important is we were attending another church when we first got here. And please listen to me because I know some of you out here are in this situation. And Tina said, I'm not being fed here. It's not culturally relevant to me, and I'm not being fed. I have some friends, Kia was one of them that Tina knew, and said, why don't you come check out PT? And Tina wanted to leave the church where I was being fed. I was being fed, but my wife wasn't. They had a very good Sunday school program for our kids. Kids weren't complaining. Kids were too young to know, really. It was the parents. So ultimately, I believe in one of the principles that they taught us from Pastor Cherry's church is agreement. It's God's plan to crown our life with peace. Agreement. We don't buy anything if we don't agree. We don't make any changes if we don't agree. And the principle of agreement, it was clear. Tina kept telling me over and over again, I'm not being fed. I'm not being fed. Sunday would come up and she'd be like, we gotta go back to this place. And I'm like, oh, come on, let's go. You know. So finally, I heard that principle of agreement in my head, and I said, all right, let's wait till the end of the school year and going into the summer, we'll go visit PT and any other church you want to visit. And I remember the first time I came to PT, it was me and the kids because Tina had an out-of-town event. So it was me that came. And Mita said, all right, we can do this. And I think we have almost 10 years now. Yeah, almost 10 years now we've been here. If you are being fed and your wife is not, or vice versa, go find a place that meets both of your needs. I'm serious about this. You have to make that decision. You got to be in agreement. We talk about being unequally yoked when it comes to a relationship. It can be that way with a church. You got to be in agreement. And so this is around the same time that we were having that problems with the other church, and then we changed. Next slide, please. As I said, our goal has been nurturing kids that will be adults that understand the importance of loving, listening, and affirming. And I want to talk about that for the last 5 minutes or so of our message. We'll stop whenever we got to stop, pick up another time if we need to pick up another time. I'm not in a rush. Listen, next slide, please. Loving, listening, and affirming is a learning process. If there's one thing, I didn't tell you this. So I'm one of those kids that was born with, I call it a learning difference. And mine was pretty severe. People talk about ADHD. I had it on steroids, still do. Matter of fact, after Tina and I got married, we had 15, 16 years of marriage, and I said, girl, you need to get tested. Seriously, girl, you need to get tested. So my son got tested. He's got ADHD. My daughter got tested. She got ADHD. I got ADHD. She got ADHD. You talk about, now seriously, you talk about two things. You have to learn how your kids learn, how you learn. And let me tell you something. I got a therapist I've been seeing for about 8 years. That's kept my marriage alive. Seriously, I can, the same way I can't imagine doing life without this church community or doing life without my wife, I can't imagine doing parenting, being a husband, without the therapist I have. There are times when we only meet once a month. Okay? There are times we meet only once a month. But when the stuff is hitting the fan, it's twice a month. It may be 3 times a month. And there were times when we were going through some of the worst difficulties that it was my coach, therapist, I call him my coach. And what's interesting about me, my learning style, I'm an audio learner. That's how I take things. I've seen my therapist live, like in his office, maybe 3 times in 8 years. All of my therapy has been on the phone. Excellent therapy. I've taught, is he a believer? No. I've had to teach him things. Does he look like me? No. He's good because we work together. And I don't go in on a therapy session with, what do you want to talk about? I'm like, look, boom. What's the last time we talked? All right, let's take it up right here. Boom, boom, let's work on this. I'm an athlete. So I just need you to tell me the things I got to work on, and I tell you the things I need to work on because, you know, my jump shot is a little off right now, so we got to work on that. Or my left hand dribble is just, we got to work on that. So I don't go into therapy with him telling me what to do. Like, we have an agenda. We have a system. And if If you have a therapist and you don't have a plan or a system, find another one. Find another one. The key to us successful and as a household, raising our kids and being successful as a family, good therapist. I'm telling you another one's going to sound weird to you. Good mechanic, good plumber, good electrician, good pastor. Like, you got to have a team around you to raise your kid the right way. Seriously, if you're running solo, it's hard. Now, let me say this to the single moms and single dads. The nice thing about being a single mom and single dad, you ain't got to agree with nobody. You decide how the kid's going to be raised, what school they're going to go to, whether it's corporal punishment. It's you. So there are some advantages in your state. There really are. And you should think about it financially. If you are a single person, you ain't got to agree on with anybody. You get a system that's going to work for you and you run that system. So there are some advantages to think about. Let's go to the next slide. Learning, this is real important. Learning requires, it says here, reading, hearing, meditating, and repeating. There's so many books that I have read, I have taken notes from in my journal. I journal every morning. The simple process for me journaling is every AM, there's a gratitude list. Every PM, there's a gratitude list. And then I'm taking notes on the books that I'm reading from Scripture and outside of that. I'm going to stop right there. I want to be obedient to our time. Thank you for listening. Hopefully, in some time in the future, we'll finish up this discussion.
Hey, family. Thank you so much for joining us for today's service. Special thanks to those of you who continue to generously support the work of this ministry. We are so grateful for you, and it's because of you that we can be a blessing to this community. If you enjoyed the service today, please like, share with your friends and family, and subscribe to our channel so that you can get a notification whenever our services go live. We also invite you to follow us on social media at PT Cambridge in order to stay connected to this ministry. Hey, we look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks for watching, and God bless you.